Now they're curious about you. Isn't it remarkable how the very people who once ignored you, doubted you, or mocked your dreams are suddenly asking about your journey? The same ones who turned their backs when you were broken now want to know how you stood tall when life tried to crush you. My friend, this is no accident. This is what happens when the hand of God begins to move in your life. Those who once dismissed you now seek your presence, not because you changed to please them, but because God changed your position before their very eyes. There was a season when your silence was ridiculed, your kindness mistaken for weakness, and your humility interpreted as lack of power. They saw nothing special, but God saw destiny. They overlooked you, but God was overseeing your story all along. They never invited you to their tables because they couldn't see the value that heaven had already placed within you. But when God decided to elevate you, the same people began to whisper, "How did this happen? How did they rise?" Let me tell you, when God is the one behind your success, no one else can claim the credit. When God promotes you, even your enemies are forced to witness it. When your time comes, God doesn't consult anyone's opinion. The same tongues that try to bury your name will one day speak it with honor. The same hearts that wrote you off will have to watch you bloom. And now, their interest in you isn't born from love. It's drawn by what God is doing through you. Divine favor cannot be hidden. It cannot be ignored. You can't go unnoticed when the light of God shines upon you. It's not arrogance. It's divine alignment. When you walk with God, His presence upon your life commands attention, not because of who you are, but because of who He is within you. That's why even those who once turned away are now turning toward you, not because they've changed, but because God has changed the atmosphere around you. Many of you have been asking, why now? Why are they showing interest after all this time? The answer is simple. You have become visible in the realm of divine manifestation. For a long while, God kept you hidden, out of sight but never out of His plan, while He shaped your character and refined your spirit. That season of loneliness, that invisible phase where you felt forgotten, was never rejection. It was preparation. God was training you for a table you couldn't yet see. And now that your appointed time has come, those who ignored you can no longer overlook you. But listen, do not let their sudden attention distract you. When people start chasing your presence after your rise, it's not always admiration. It's often a test. God is watching to see if He will seek their validation or continue to seek His presence. Some return not out of love, but out of need. Not everyone who claps for you is celebrating you. Some simply don't want to be left behind by the same one they once underestimated. That's why humility must remain your anchor. When God lifts you, pride becomes your greatest threat. Never let applause make you forget the tears that watered your growth. Never let praise make you forget who carried you through the nights of despair. Remember, the same God who raised you can humble you if you forget where your strength comes from. The purpose of your elevation is not to flaunt your greatness, but to reflect His glory. God didn't bless you to prove people wrong. He blessed you to prove that He is faithful. A day will come when those who rejected you will say, "We always believed in you." Don't argue. Don't remind them of their disbelief. Just smile and say, "It was God." Because that's the truth. It was never your power, never your connections, never your talent alone. It was the unseen hand of God pushing you forward while everything else tried to hold you back. It was His voice whispering, "Keep going," when every voice around you said, "Give up." And sometimes God allows rejection as divine protection. He lets people walk away so that no one else can take credit for what He's about to do in your life. If they had stayed, they would have said, "We helped you get here." But God wanted the testimony to be clear, that your victory came from Him alone. That's why some doors closed, some relationships ended, and some opportunities disappeared. It wasn't punishment. It was preparation for the promise. Now, they're suddenly interested in you. Isn't it amazing how the same people who once ignored your voice, questioned your dreams, and laughed at your faith now want to know your story? The very ones who turned away when you were struggling now want to understand how you're still standing after everything tried to break you. My friend, this isn't coincidence. This is what happens when the hand of God starts to move in your life. Those who once dismissed you now seek your company. Not because you changed to fit their expectations, but because God changed your position right before their eyes. There was a time when your silence was mocked, your kindness was mistaken for weakness, and your humility was seen as insignificance. They couldn't recognize the treasure within you, but God saw destiny. They overlooked you, but heaven was watching over you all along. They never invited you to their tables because they couldn't perceive the value that God himself had placed inside you. But when divine favor began to lift you, those same voices started to whisper, "How did this happen? How did they rise?" Let me tell you, when God is the author of your success, no one else can claim the glory. When he promotes you, even your enemies have to witness it. And when it's your appointed time, God doesn't seek anyone's permission. The same mouths that once buried your name will speak it with honor. The same eyes that once looked down on you will watch you flourish. And now, their interest isn't born from affection. It's stirred by the evidence of what God is doing through you. Divine favor is never subtle. You can't hide when heaven's light is shining on you. It's not pride, it's divine alignment. When you walk with God, his presence on your life speaks louder than words. The attention you draw isn't about who you are, but about who he is within you. That's why those who once turned their backs are now turning their eyes toward you. Not because they've changed, but because God has shifted the atmosphere surrounding you. Many of you have wondered, why now? Why are they showing interest after all this time? The reason is simple. You have become visible in the realm of divine manifestation. For a long season, God kept you hidden, not forgotten, just protected, while he molded your heart and strengthened your character. That season of silence, that period of invisibility, wasn't rejection. It was preparation. God was shaping you for a table you hadn't even seen yet. And now that your time has arrived, those who once ignored you can no longer deny you. But be careful. Their sudden attention is not always admiration. Sometimes it's a test. God is observing whether you will chase their approval or remain anchored in his presence. Some people return not because they love you, but because they love what they can gain from you. Not everyone who claps for you is celebrating you. Some just don't want to be left behind by the one they once underestimated. That's why humility must remain your foundation. When God elevates you, pride becomes your greatest enemy. Never let the applause make you forget the tears that birthed your strength. Never let the compliments make you forget who carried you when no one else cared. Always remember, the same God who lifted you up can humble you if you forget where your help comes from. The purpose of your promotion is not to show off your greatness, but to showcase his faithfulness. God didn't bless you so you could prove people wrong. He blessed you so you could prove that he is true to his word. A day will come when those who once doubted you will say, "We always knew you could do it." Don't argue. Don't remind them of their disbelief. Just smile and say, "It was God," because that's the truth. It was never your strength, never your influence, never your brilliance alone. It was the unseen hand of God pushing you forward when everything else tried to hold you back. It was his whisper, "Keep going," when every other voice said, "You're finished." Sometimes God allows rejection not to harm you, but to protect you. He lets certain people walk away so they won't steal the glory for what he's about to do in your life. If they had stayed, they would have claimed, "We helped you get there." But God wanted the testimony to be pure, untouched by human hands. So everyone would know your breakthrough came from him alone. That's why some doors closed, some friendships faded, and some opportunities vanished. It wasn't punishment. It was preparation for a promise that always had your name on it. Now people are drawn to you, not because you chase them, but because they can't deny what God has done. Don't despise the days when you were ignored or overlooked. Those were sacred days, holy ground where God taught you humility, dependence, and faith. That's when your roots went deep, so your fruit could last. Every tear you cried watered your destiny. Every betrayal cleared your path. Every loss was leading you to divine gain. Now that you're standing in the light, never forget what the darkness taught you. The storm wasn't wasted. It strengthened you. The rejection wasn't pointless. It refined your focus. The loneliness wasn't cruel. It introduced you to God's voice. So when you look back, don't curse those who left. Thank God they did. Their absence made room for his presence. They see your success now, but they don't know your struggle. They see your fruit, but not your roots. They admire your crown, but never saw your cross. They celebrate your blessing, but never felt your breaking. They don't know the nights you cried, the prayers you prayed, or the faith it took to stand when everything in you wanted to fall. That's why you can't let their sudden attention define you. Let God define you. Let his approval be your peace. There's a reason God didn't let you fit in. He wasn't rejecting you. He was reserving you. You were never meant to blend in with the crowd. You were chosen to stand out for his glory. So when those who once dismiss you now try to reconnect, use wisdom. Not every hand that reaches out is meant to lift you up. Some are trying to pull you back down. Stay steady. Stay humble. Stay discerning. Because your story is not over. This is just the beginning of what God has been preparing behind the scenes. The same people who doubted you will one day testify that they saw the hand of God on your life. They may not understand it now, but soon they'll realize it was never luck. It was divine purpose unfolding in plain sight. Now they're drawn to you, not because their hearts suddenly softened, but because God's glory can't be hidden forever. When he decides to reveal what he's been building in private, the world must take notice. People are drawn to light, and you have become a reflection of that divine light. They can't explain it, but they feel it. Something in you has changed. Your words carry authority. Your presence brings peace. Even your silence holds power. That's not human. That's heaven's imprint. Because when you walk with God to the fire and come out refined, your spirit shines differently. They see the glow, but not the grief. They see the strength, but not the scars. Yet that's how God works, turning wounds into wisdom and pain into power. When you were weeping in the dark, God was shaping your spirit. When you were rejected, he was redirecting your path. When you were ignored, he was igniting something divine inside you. And now that you stand radiant with faith, what they're really seeing is the manifestation of his promise. When God blesses, he doesn't do it in secret. He does it publicly, in front of the very people who thought you'd never make it, not to shame them, but to showcase his faithfulness. He turns your humiliation into honor, your rejection into recognition, your pain into purpose. And now they wonder, what's your secret? But it's no secret. It was obedience. It was faith when no one believed. It was trust when nothing made sense. Some people only value you once the world validates you. They couldn't see your worth when you were planting, but now that you're harvesting, they're drawn to your garden. But you know the truth. It was always God, from the start to the finish, from the pain to the promise. It was him all along. But God saw your worth when your hands were empty. He called you valuable when others called you replaceable. He saw purpose when others only saw delay. That's why you must never trade your authenticity for approval. The same people who celebrate you today could criticize you tomorrow, but the God who lifted you will never change. You don't have to fight for recognition. You don't have to explain your journey to those who never walked it. When God elevates you, your story speaks louder than any defense. Every tear you cried became a testimony. Every valley you endured became a classroom for your soul. And now, your very existence preaches the truth that God is real. When you walk into a room, those who once doubted you feel conviction. Not because you've done anything against them, but because your life has become living proof of what faith can do. So don't let their attention make you forget your isolation. Don't forget who held you when no one else did. Don't forget the nights you almost broke, the moments you almost quit. God was there. When the phone stayed silent, when your prayers drowned in tears, when people you trusted walked away. He was the reason you didn't fall apart. And now, when those same people return with smiles and compliments, remember this truth. You don't owe them credit. You owe God gratitude. Sometimes, God blesses you publicly to reward what you did privately. He saw when you forgave instead of seeking revenge. He saw when you gave even when you had nothing left. He saw when you stayed silent instead of defending yourself. And now that quiet obedience shines like a crown upon your head. You became who you are not by fighting people, but by surrendering to God's will. That's why your rise can't be explained. It's too divine for human logic. When God chooses you, He also changes your surroundings. He shifts the atmosphere to match your assignment. That's why certain people couldn't stay. They weren't meant to handle your next level. If they had stayed, they would have contaminated your calling. Their departure was a rejection. It was divine subtraction. God removed them because He saw what you couldn't see. He knew they didn't celebrate you. They merely tolerated you. So He separated you before they could sabotage what He was building. And now, as God elevates you, some of those same people act interested again. But remember, interest is not the same as intention. Some people are drawn to your blessing, not your being. That's why discernment is your shield in this new season. Pray before you say yes. Listen before you embrace. Watch what they do before you believe what they say. God is giving you spiritual vision to see beyond flattery, because every blessing attracts both pure hearts and hidden agendas. But don't let that fear you. Let it fuel your prayer life. The higher God takes you, the deeper your dependence on Him must grow. Never let success silence your seeking. Understand this. This new attention is part of your assignment. God is using your story as a living message. When they see how you overcame, when they notice the peace that follows you, when they witness how favor surrounds you, it will make them wonder. And that moment of wonder is your chance to testify, not about your strength, but about God's mercy. Because you didn't reach this place by power or effort. You arrived by grace. Grace carried you when effort failed. Grace lifted you when strength ran out. Grace turned your pain into purpose and your tears into triumph. Don't let the world convince you that your worth depends on their validation. You were valuable when you were unseen. You were powerful when you were unheard. You were chosen when you were overlooked. The applause of people doesn't define you. The approval of God does. And sometimes God allows rejection so that when honor arrives, you'll know exactly who deserves the glory. He humbles you before He promotes you, so your heart stays pure when the crowd begins to cheer. So when people reach out to you now, be kind, but be wise. Not everyone who claps for you is happy for you. Some clap just to get close enough to cut. But stay grounded, stay grateful, stay guarded, because what God started in private, He is now revealing in power. And this is only the beginning of His glory in your life. Don't close your heart, but guard it. Don't hate those who left you. Thank them. They played their part in pushing you closer to God. Their absence drove you to prayer. Their betrayal pushed you into purpose. Their silence trained your ear to hear God's voice. That's how He molds His chosen ones, not through ease, but through endurance, not through comfort, but through challenge. Every great move of God begins in hidden places. You can't skip the season of obscurity, the secret place where no one claps, no one notices, and no one praises you. That's where dependence is built. Discernment is sharpened and endurance is forged. That's where your roots grow deep enough to carry the weight of future glory. Because when the spotlight finally comes, you must stand firm, not crumble. God doesn't want you to flicker for a moment. He wants you to burn for a lifetime. That's why He let you walk through darkness first, so you'd learn to shine without fear. And now that you carry light, don't apologize for it. You paid a price for this glow. You wept for it. You prayed through nights for it. You surrendered for it. So when people suddenly take interest, walk with dignity. Let your confidence come from heaven, not from human applause. You don't need to chase respect when you already walk in divine authority. You don't need to beg to belong when you've already been chosen. When you operate in your God-given purpose, you become magnetic, not because of appearance, but because of anointing. The peace you carry will draw the weary. The strength you embody will inspire the broken. The wisdom you speak will awaken the lost. That's the power of walking with God. It transforms you from the inside out, and it ripples into the lives of everyone you encounter. Yes, some people will come close only to benefit from your light, and that's okay. You were blessed to be a blessing. Just don't let their motives manipulate your mission. Serve, but protect your boundaries. Give, but guard your peace. Love freely, but wisely. The same God who elevated you expects you to protect what He entrusted to you. Don't let your compassion become an open door for manipulation. Learn to stand firm when flattered, to to stay humble when honored, and to keep praying when praised. Because favor can become dangerous if your faith grows weak. The moment you start believing you did it on your own is the moment pride begins to pull you down. Stay rooted in God, and He'll keep adding new dimensions to your destiny. What He started in you, He will perfect in His time. Every blessing you receive is just one chapter in a far greater story, a story only He can write. Remember, sometimes those who admire you today may envy you tomorrow, and those who envied you yesterday may one day need you. That's why you can't take any of it personally. Your journey was never about proving people wrong. It was about proving that God was right to choose you. He saw something in you that others missed. He saw faith in your weakness, hope in your heartbreak, courage in your pain. He saw a vessel He could trust with influence. And now they're interested in you, but they still don't understand that what you carried didn't come from the applause of men. It came from the approval of God. What you have wasn't handed to you. It was birthed in prayer. It was watered with tears. It was refined in silence. People admire the glow, but they don't know the grind. They see the shine, but not the shaping. They notice the strength, but not the nights you cried on your knees, whispering, God, just give me the strength for one more day. And through it all, God was molding something eternal inside you. When you were in the valley, no one wanted to walk beside you. When the storm surrounded you, no one stood near. But the moment the clouds broke and the sun began to shine, suddenly they recognized your worth. That's the mystery of God's timing. He hides His chosen ones in plain sight until the appointed hour. He lets people overlook you until the day He decides to reveal His glory through you. And when that day comes, no one can deny it. The same voices that doubted you will have no choice but to speak of your victory. Because what they see now isn't luck. It's the faithfulness of God on full display. You see, there are people who only begin to recognize your worth once others start celebrating it. They never saw your seed. They only see your harvest. But God saw you long before the applause, when you were still buried beneath the soil of obscurity. He watched you break under the pressure of pain, yet still push upward to the dirt of difficulty. He saw your struggle in silence, your tears in the dark, your faith when no one believed. And because you didn't give up in the darkness, He's now allowing you to bloom in the light. The same ones who thought you were finished are now speechless at how beautifully you're flourishing. That's why you must never measure your worth by people's attention. Their interest is temporary, but God's affection is eternal. People's fascination fades, but His favor never does. They might admire your blessing today, yet only God stood by you when you were broken yesterday. Their cheers come and go like the wind, but His love remains a foundation that never moves. So stand tall, not because they're watching, but because He's watching. Walk humbly, not because they're clapping, but because you remember the nights when no one cared. And don't be shocked when those who once ignored you now try to align with you. That's what divine elevation does. It exposes hearts. Some will smile while secretly comparing. Others will clap while quietly competing. But none of that matters when your confidence is anchored in God. When you are rooted in Him, no storm of opinion can shake your peace. God didn't raise you for validation. He raised you for revelation. He wants the world to see that He can take a life from obscurity and make it a testimony of glory. He wants people to know His blessings are not reserved for the powerful or the popular. They're reserved for the faithful. You are living proof that obedience still opens doors. That prayer still moves heaven. That faith still shifts mountains. That trusting God still works. And that is why they're interested. They're witnessing a power they can't explain. But remember this, attention is a test. What you do with it determines whether God can trust you with more. If you use it to glorify Him, He will increase it. But if you use it to glorify yourself, He will remove it. Every blessing has a purpose, not to make you famous, but to make Him known through you. You are not the destination. You are the direction. You are not the source. You are the reflection. You are not the light. You are the mirror of His light. So when they ask about your success, point them to the source. When they admire your peace, tell them about the one who calmed your storms. When they speak of your strength, remind them of the nights you were weak and He carried you. Every trial you faced was building a platform for this moment. Every tear you shed was watering the foundation of your destiny. Every disappointment was carving the design of your purpose. When you were in pain, you couldn't see progress, but God was working behind the curtain. He was aligning opportunities, shifting hearts, and preparing places where your name would be spoken with honor. And now that people are paying attention, handle it with grace. Don't become what hurt you. Don't treat people the way they treated you. Rise above it. Show them your transformation wasn't just visible, it was spiritual. Because true growth is not just in success. It's in how you love, forgive, and stand tall without pride. And understand this truth. Not everyone who returns deserves a seat again. Forgiveness doesn't always mean reconnection. Some people were meant to teach you a lesson, not travel your journey. God removed them for a reason. Don't bring them back out of emotion. When God prunes, He protects. When He cuts, He clears a path for new growth. Be thankful for every goodbye that led you closer to Him. Because some people had to leave so you could finally learn how to lean fully on God. And when they see this new season, when they see the peace in your eyes, the joy in your walk, the favor that follows you, they'll call it a miracle. And they'll be right. It is a miracle. Because no one but God could have done what He's done in your life. He took your pain and turned it into prophecy. He took your scars and shaped them into stories of strength. He took your broken pieces and built something beautiful from them. Now, those who once pitted you stand in awe of you, not because you became powerful, but because they can't deny the presence of God that surrounds you. You didn't need revenge. You needed revelation. You didn't need validation. You needed vision. And now, your life is the evidence that grace is real, that mercy still works, and that God's timing is always perfect. You didn't need approval. You needed revelation. You didn't need recognition. You needed anointing. And now that you have it, protect it. Let your heart stay pure, because power without humility becomes poison. The moment you start believing you made it by your own strength, you begin to lose the very thing that made you great, your dependence on God. Never outgrow gratitude. Never let success silence your prayer. Never allow abundance to replace your hunger for His presence. Because God didn't lift you to make you comfortable. He lifted you to make you impactful. The blessings you carry are not trophies. They are tools for transformation. Your story is a light meant to awaken those still walking through darkness. Someone, somewhere, is watching your life right now, holding on to hope, believing that if God could do it for you, He can do it for them. So live in a way that honors that faith. Walk with integrity. Move with compassion. Speak with wisdom. Because your life itself is a sermon, one that reaches hearts long before your words ever do. And yes, the higher God takes you, the lonelier it may feel. Not everyone can handle the altitude of divine elevation. Some people lose their breath where you were built to breathe. But that's all right. God will surround you with those who understand your purpose, not just your progress. He will send people who pray for you, not compete with you. People who celebrate your calling, not covet it. These are divine alignments, souls who strengthen your spirit and remind you of your mission when the world starts distracting you with noise. So when new faces start showing up in your life, don't just rejoice, discern. Ask God to show you who's sent by Him and who's merely drawn by curiosity, because discernment will save you from disappointment. Not everyone who's interested in you is assigned to you. Some are sent to distract you, others to develop you, and only a few are meant to walk with you. Don't let excitement make you careless. Let wisdom lead your choices. This is your season of visibility, but humility must remain your foundation, because the same God who brought you from the shadows can send you back there if pride takes root. You must remember, it's not your name that's being glorified. It's His name shining through you. The moment you start chasing the crowd more than the Creator, you lose your direction. So stay hidden in Him, even when the world sees you. Stay quiet in spirit, even when your voice echoes far. Here's a truth few understand. Sometimes God will use your success to test the hearts of others. He will let your blessing expose envy. He will let your growth reveal loyalty. Because not everyone can celebrate you without comparison. But don't waste your strength fighting those who misunderstand you. Let your peace speak louder than your defense. The same God who vindicated you in private would offend you in public. So let them talk. Let them watch. Let them wonder. Keep your focus fixed on where it belongs. You don't need to prove your worth. You already did when you refused to quit, when you stayed faithful in the fire, when you believed even when there was no evidence, when you lifted your hands in gratitude, even while your heart was breaking. That's when heaven took notice. That's when your breakthrough was born, not in applause, but in adversity. So now, as the world starts to notice you, stay grounded in the same faith that carried you when no one was watching. Remember this: you are not who they said you were. You are who God says you are. You are not defined by rejection. You are refined by it. You are not the result of what people did to you. You are the result of what God did through you. Everything that tried to destroy you was actually training you. Every loss was a rehearsal for victory. Every wound was a doorway into wisdom. Every setback was setting up your step forward. And now you carry divine strength. Strength that cannot be faked, borrowed, or denied. And those who once ignored you now can't help but notice. Let them talk. Let them speculate. Let them analyze. You don't owe explanations to anyone. Let your peace confuse them. Let your joy unsettle them. Let your consistency silence them. Because the God who lifted you will continue proving his hand over your life again and again. Your story isn't finished. It's still unfolding. And every chapter shines brighter than the last. Because when God authors your destiny, even your scars become sacred. And your light, it never stops growing. And now that they're interested in you, child of God, don't let it shake your spirit. This is what happens when divine favor begins to manifest. When God lifts you from the valley to the mountain, the same voices that once dismissed you will now echo with curiosity. The same hands that once pointed at you in mockery will now reach out in admiration. But here's a sacred truth you must never forget. Not everyone who becomes interested in you deserves access to you. Some are drawn to your light not to celebrate it, but to see if they can dim it. When God begins to elevate you, both destiny helpers and destiny thieves are drawn to your presence. That's why discernment becomes your armor in seasons of visibility. When God hides you, it's not rejection, it's protection. When he reveals you, it's not for applause, it's for his purpose. So when new faces appear, when voices that once ignored you suddenly sound sweet, don't rush to open your heart to every compliment. Sometimes, the very ones who rejected you were being used by God to shape your humility while he built your strength. Their absence taught you endurance. Their silence deepened your prayer life. Their neglect purified your motives. Now, as they return, don't look at them through pride. Look through perspective. See how every part of your past was perfectly timed by God. Rejection was not a punishment. It was preparation for recognition. When you were unseen, you were being shaped. God was writing your story in secret, molding your character, and training your faith for the weight of the calling to come. In that quiet, hidden season, he strengthened your roots so your fruit could last. You were hidden not because you were forgotten, but because you were in formation. You were being healed, refined, and taught who you are in God, not who people said you were. Now that the crowd gathers, remember, the approval of men fades, but the approval of God is forever. If you begin chasing attention, you'll lose the anointing that drew them to you in the first place. So when interest rises around you, don't get distracted. Stay grounded in gratitude, clothed in humility, and anchored in remembrance. Remember who you were when no one noticed. Remember the tears that fell when no one cared. Remember how God carried you when everyone else walked away. Those memories will keep your heart soft and your spirit steady. Because success without humility becomes a trap, and attention without discernment becomes a test. God is watching how you handle this season of visibility. Will you still give him the glory? Or will you allow pride to whisper lies into your soul? Listen carefully. The reason people are suddenly interested in you is not because you changed for them, but because God's hand is now visible upon your life. They can't explain it, but they can't ignore it. The peace that surrounds you, the resilience that keeps you standing, the light in your eyes. These things can't be imitated. They are the fragrance of divine favor. You survived storms that were meant to destroy you, and now your survival has become your testimony. And that testimony is magnetic. It draws attention. It commands respect. It silences doubt. The very ones who once looked down on you will now look up and wonder, how did they make it through? But remember, attention is not always admiration. Some watch to learn, others to imitate, a few to sabotage. That's why your relationship with God must remain your anchor. Don't let the applause of men drown out the whisper of heaven. Because when God is pleased with you, misunderstanding no longer matters. When God elevates you, no one can bring you down. When he declares you chosen, no one can disqualify you. This season of attention is both a blessing and a battlefield. The blessing is that your influence is growing. The battlefield is that your humility will be tested. Will you still pray the same way when you are praised? Will you still depend on God when others depend on you? Will you still seek his presence when you can easily seek attention? These are the questions that separate those who rise for a moment from those who stand for a lifetime. And remember this, God didn't bring you this far to make you a spectacle. He brought you this far to make you a vessel. You are not a showpiece of success. You are a carrier of divine purpose. Your story wasn't written to inflate your ego. It was designed to inspire faith. You are living proof that grace still works, that obedience still pays, and that God still raises those who trust him in silence. So when people become interested in you, don't let pride take the pen from God's hand. The author of your destiny is still writing, and the next chapter will be even greater than the last. Redirect their gaze to the one who made you. Let your words point back to God. Let your actions reveal his heart. Let your success become an altar of thanksgiving, not a stage for pride. Because the same people who are fascinated by you today may forget you tomorrow. Human attention is fragile, but God's faithfulness is forever. So don't cling to the crowd. Cling to your Creator. Don't measure your worth by who applauds you. Measure it by the one who designed you. Don't lose your peace trying to protect people's approval. If someone is meant to walk with you, God will align their heart. If not, he will remove them gently, not to harm you, but to protect you. And here's a deeper truth. Sometimes God allows rejection so that when they return, you can see just how far his grace carried you without them. Not to boast, but to remember that your progress was never dependent on their presence. It was God who provided when doors were closed. It was God who defended you when no one stood beside you. It was God who gave you strength when everything in you wanted to quit. So now, when people become interested in you, guard your heart more carefully than ever, because interest always brings both opportunity and temptation. When God begins to shine his light upon you, that same light which reveals your blessings will also expose your vulnerabilities. People will smile at you, not always to celebrate you, but sometimes to study you. Some will come to learn, some will come to take, some will come to uplift, and some will come to manipulate. If you are not grounded in God, the attention that was meant to glorify him can quickly destroy you. That's why God hides certain treasures within your spirit, so that no one can steal what was divinely planted inside of you. You must understand this truth. Attention is not affirmation. Just because people notice you doesn't mean they understand you. Just because they clap for you doesn't mean they care for you. Some will draw near not out of love, but out of curiosity. They want to see if you are truly who you claim to be, or if your faith was only a show. And when God elevates you, curiosity becomes your new companion. That's when your discernment must rise higher than ever. Because not everyone who comes to you in peace carries peace. Some carry flattery on their lips, but jealousy in their hearts. Some will honor you publicly, while secretly envying the God who works through you. So in this season, when eyes are watching and hearts are turning toward you, stay anchored in truth. Remind yourself daily, your worth didn't begin when they noticed you. It began when God created you. You were valuable in the quiet seasons. You were powerful when you were invisible. You were chosen long before you had a platform. Never confuse popularity with purpose. Popularity fades, but purpose remains. One day they cheer, the next day they disappear, but God stays constant. His love doesn't rise and fall with your performance. His favor doesn't depend on applause. And that's what makes your journey sacred. You are being prepared, not for admiration, but for assignment. God doesn't raise people for fame. He raises them for impact. He doesn't crown egos. He commissions hearts. If people are drawn to you now, it's because they see something divine reflecting through you. They see calmness where chaos once lived. They see light where confusion once ruled. They sense peace in your presence, and they can't explain it. That is the power of a surrendered life. It draws without trying. It influences without speaking. It shines without striving. But hear me, this kind of favor demands maturity. You cannot afford arrogance in this season. You cannot allow pride to plant roots in your heart, because pride is the fastest way to fall from divine elevation. It turns blessings into burdens and favor into failure. So remember what God whispered to your soul in the darkest hours. Remember the tears that watered your roots. Remember the lonely nights when your only strength was His name on your lips. That was not wasted pain. It was holy preparation. Every sleepless night was a seed. Every broken prayer was a blueprint. Every silent struggle was a shaping hand of grace. And now, the same light that shines from you carries the story of every battle you survived. So stay humble. Stay hidden in God. Stay hungry for His presence. Because this light you carry was not given cheaply. It was forged in fire. And its purpose is not to make you famous, but to make Him known. Now, as the same people who once ignored you come seeking your presence, never forget who gave you the strength to stand. There will be moments when people will celebrate you for things only God could have done. They will call you talented, wise, and gifted. But in those moments, humble your heart and return the glory to the source. Because every ability you carry, every open door you walk through, every drop of wisdom within you is divine. You didn't reach this point by luck or talent alone. God sustained you when life tried to break you. God whispered truth into your heart when others silenced your voice. God turned your wounds into wisdom and your suffering into strength. So, don't let their attention redirect your loyalty. The same God who lifted you up is the same God who can humble you if your heart forgets Him. And sometimes, God will test you through the very attention you once prayed for. You asked for influence. Now He watches how you steward it. You asked for favor. Now He observes how you use it. Will you use your platform to glorify Him or to glorify yourself? Will you remain humble when people honor you? Or will you forget the humility that brought you here? Remember this. God is not impressed by fame. He is moved by faithfulness. You may impress the world with your success, but you touch the heart of God with your surrender. People may now see your light, but only God knows the oil that burns behind it. They see your glory, but they never witness your struggle. They see your peace, but they never felt your warfare. They see your confidence, but they have no idea about the nights you spent trembling in prayer. That's why you must never let their opinions define you, because they are late to the story. They entered in the chapter of your victory, not the pages of your pain. But God was present in both. He was your companion when no one else stood by your side. So no matter how bright the stage becomes, never walk away from the altar. God didn't bring you this far to let you be consumed by human praise. He brought you here so that your life will become a living testimony of His power. The same mouths that once spoke against you will now testify of what He has done through you. But even in that moment, never lose focus, because the purpose of recognition is redirection. To redirect every ounce of glory back to God. You are not the source. You are the vessel. You are not the light. You carry the light. And there will be days when the weight of attention feels heavy, when the pressure of expectation presses upon your heart. People will expect you to always shine, to always have answers, to always remain strong. But hear this. You don't have to perform for anyone. You are not sustained by their approval. You are sustained by God's grace. When the pressure rises, retreat into the secret place. When the noise of the world becomes loud, return to the silence of His presence, because it is in solitude that God renews your strength. And when you emerge again, you will shine, not because of their validation, but because of His presence. Yes, there will be those who draw near only to see if you will stumble. They want to witness your fall, because your rise disrupted their comfort. But let them watch, for your foundation is not built on their acceptance. It is rooted in God's truth. Even if they plot, they cannot prevail, because no scheme can stand against the one whom God protects. Your assignment is too divine to be destroyed by human jealousy. So don't waste time fearing their motives. Focus on your mission. Let your success speak softly, but let your humility roar loudly. When God raises you, He expects you to rise with grace. The higher you climb, the deeper your roots must grow. You cannot afford to drift into pride or comparison. Keep your eyes fixed on God, not on who claps and not on who criticizes, because the same wind that lifts a bird can also scatter one without balance. So stay grounded in prayer. Stay anchored in truth. Stay humble in victory. For when your heart remains surrendered, God will continue to expand your influence, and He will never let success corrupt your soul.